Welcome to 99th Monkey Liberty News for Wednesday, May 7th, 2014. I'm beginning today with, and today's not Ladies' Day, in case you were wondering. I do have some links that I found from through Cynthia McKinney, but not written by women. This was on Drudge from Washington Examiner. FEC chair warns that conservative media like Drudge Report and Sean Hannity face regulation like political action committees. And Alex Jones, of course, is freaking out about this morning. I am trying to not freak out, but it's monumental. The internet is being gradually, internet freedom is being eroded. This does not bode well for the future, at least, the kind of relatively immediate future. This is something that we're going to have to get through. From RT, Putin calls for end to Kiev's military op, postponing referendum in East Ukraine. So, to some extent, this is good news. I guess a sigh of relief that we're not going to immediately have a nuclear war. But there are still some really odd things going on. There were some Russian fighter jets that were flying along the west coast, and it's likely, evidently, that they were able to jam the computer systems, and that is why last week there were a few hours where flights out of Western airports were delayed and the computer system crashed. It sounds as if it's likely that the Russian jets did something to crash the computer systems. So we live in some very interesting times. I'm sure you are already aware of that. This is one of the links that I found through Cynthia McKinney. All Africa, U.S. military holds war games on Nigeria and Somalia. So is this the next place that's in their sights? War games are never good news, as far as I'm concerned. The 5-day war crimes were designed to look at what crises might erupt in different parts of the world in 5 to 25 years, and how the United States might handle that. That's an interesting way to put it, how the United States would handle crises in other parts of the world. So moving on from there, just for some perspective of, it's not we the people in the U.S. who are doing this. It's the social engineers, the people who feel like it is their right and privilege and maybe even duty to control the world. And along those lines, Fritz Springmeier has written this post, Bilderberg Meetings, and this is information on Bilderberg Meetings, and Fritz is presenting a very objective, he's just presenting the information. He's not making judgments, but you can read between the lines and understand here that these people really do believe that it is their right to make determinations for the rest of the world, for the entire world. And you can read about this here if you're interested. One of the things I want to focus on is, as Fritz has written more about the Illuminati, they very clearly believe that one of the mandates that's upon them is to limit world population, and they do this through eugenics. And in Fritz's posts on Facebook and at Mercy Triumphs, they've been very open about that. They freely admit that that's what they're doing, and they make no apologies for it, and they're reasonably pleased with themselves. This is an older article. This is actually from 2010, but somebody posted it on Facebook, and it just kind of came into my field of vision, and it goes with this information. Yes, they really do want to reduce the population. 22 shocking population control quotes from the global elite that will make you want to lose your lunch. And it does have 22 quotes, and you've probably heard many of them because, again, this information's been around for a while, since 2010. But because the world population is still expanding, they are open to eugenics. And again, even as Fritz is presenting them in kind of a, it's kind of a PR stance, they are very open about this, that they want to call the population, that actually the phrase culled from the herd was actually literally used, and I can't abide that. You want a kinder, gentler Illuminati? Well, then stop mismanaging the world's resources so that we can experience abundance rather than lack. We watched this film last night, and there are a lot of deep thoughts that we had about it. Do you want to join in?
I'm just listening.
Okay, maybe Don's here. Maybe he'll have something to add to what I say. I didn't expect this to be. I was watching this for entertainment, quite frankly. I wasn't even looking for indications of what was going on under the surface. But this film actually makes it pretty obvious what was going on under the surface. Steve Jobs was actually pretty brash, kind of offensive in the way he was single-minded and determined to produce a better computer. And he left some of his friends behind in the process, and he really had a very single vision to make personal computing completely accessible to virtually all Americans. And what happened, the film doesn't show how this happened, but evidently somebody betrayed him, because when he saw what Microsoft was doing with Windows, he immediately knew that the idea had been directly stolen from him, and called Bill Gates to confront him.
Yeah, I think if you, like Cindy said, it's pretty straightforward, but you also wonder where Steve Jobs got the deep knowledge of being able to recognize an authoritarian culture that was not friendly to people. There was an advertising campaign in 1984 saying because of their products, 1984 wouldn't be like 1984. And of course that means he read the novel, was familiar with that, the encroaching culture, which anyone that's alert and aware at that time would have been through those books by George Orwell, through reading Kurt Vonnegut, and now he attended Reed College, which was primarily a very expensive upper-class liberal arts college in Oregon, and of course he dropped out because when he learned how much it cost, he knew his parents couldn't afford it. He was adopted, and his adopted parents. So what I'm saying, what I see here is the importance of a deep liberal arts education, meaning the way that education formerly had been in the past in the United States is that an educated man or woman was educated on a wide variety of subjects, and kind of like the ideal of the Renaissance man. And there has been a trend in an opposite direction to make us be like Europe, where we're just we're robots, we're automatons, we fill the slots and the jobs that are needed in whatever industries are being populated to complete the work in building the Borg. And Steve Jobs saw right through that from the start. He saw what computers could be. But he knew what they were trying to make them into. And his single-minded mission was to not let it go in that direction of enslavement. He probably knew that IBM computers were used for in the Nazi concentration camps to catalog the prisoners and keep track of all the numbers and all of that. He probably knew all that. And in the movie, you see his anger at Bill Gates in one scene in particular. So I'm saying all this to say, if we want a new renaissance, we need the ability to see through the matrix, and it is a broad education like a Renaissance type education that enabled Steve Jobs to do this and to be the innovator with a vision for the freedom of the individual. And that's what we've got to get back to and not just follow orders and just do what's asked of you and just fill the slots that needed to be filled and live your life and being a simple idiot and struggling for the legal tender and all that good stuff from the 60s and 70s. He picked it up and he integrated it, and he really did change the world.
And Microsoft, this is an oversimplification to state it this way, but Microsoft is essentially an extension of IBM.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. They called it Big Blue in the movie, and that was IBM. And yeah, what I think that what Apple Computer and all the other little computers, but it primarily became Apple, they were the challenge to to Big Blue, IBM, and Microsoft, and they forced Microsoft to do things like add font choices to their word processors. They probably wouldn't have done that at all if Steve Jobs hadn't been all about making the computer a tool for artists and graphics people. So he really did change the landscape in a very, very good direction, and we would be in a far more enslaved and poor world if Apple Computer hadn't been had this single-minded vision of Steve Jobs behind it.
Yeah, and another aspect of the film is the tyranny of the old guard, and it's subtle in the film, but there's this appearance that he wanted to, become larger, have more influence, and grow his business, and some money people stepped in, ostensibly to help him, and at first perhaps they were helping him, but some people that we think of, we names that we associate with some of the old guard control mechanisms came in and ostensibly again to help him grow, but eventually they took his company away from him. And then, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's all about they want to help, but they steer it the direction they want it to go, and it's always in the name of efficiency, and it's always against the direction of creativity. So, they were all about, we're losing money, so we've got to cut this, but they're destroying their future in the same process. So these guys can be long-term, the controlling elites can be long-term visioned with their vision in mind, but when they're trying to help, quote, somebody else's vision, they're very short-term minded, and what they're really doing is steering the short-term vision of the innovator into their long-term vision, which basically kills off a lot of it, and basically you end up with the Borg. And the lower level bankers and financiers probably don't know this, but the higher up ones certainly do.
Sure. So because they killed it, they killed what he was trying to do when they got rid of him. They called him back when it was kind of, on its deathbed. Apple was kind of on its deathbed, and he breathed new life into it. And then, of course, his great innovation and the moment when Apple really took a large part of the market share was with the introduction of the iPod, which he characterized as 1,000 songs in your pocket, which is that's so inspirational, that's so attractive. But then the iPod and iTunes have been turned into an enforcement arm for copyright law.
And of course, if you have listened to us before, you know the copyright law doesn't really protect the artist. It just protects the industry consolidation of power. So it doesn't really enhance creativity as it is supposed to on the surface. And unfortunately, that's what Apple and iTunes have turned into. And Jobs is probably innocent and probably thought that the copyright protection is a good thing. So even as broadly educated as he was, he didn't have all the pieces, and he didn't fight every single fight. We think that there's a pretty good chance that he was killed. Cancer can be given, and the form of cancer he had, pancreatic cancer, is very, very hard to fight and win. And he did fight it with a lot of natural information and natural cures, but that's not a part of the movie. But that's just to say that he really was fighting for the future of humanity. And through this movie, the story will be more widely known. So we encourage everybody to watch it and share it with your friends. And then there is an importation of the vision that happens when you watch the movie.
There is, and one thing that you can certainly learn from this film is the game is rigged. The game is seriously rigged. And I have another article about that from this website called TruthSnap, the next lending bubble, subprime auto loans. And this article is from last December, but I'm addressing this here because this was one of the topics that Alex Jones talked with Porter Stansberry about the other day when Porter Stansberry was on InfoWars. That Porter Stansberry said that 90% of all auto loans in the last few years are subprime. What does this mean? This means that they're lending money to people who cannot afford to pay it back. On the surface, this sets up a bubble, like the real estate bubble, that they're going to be, there's potential here for another banking collapse when people start to default on these loans. But even in a way more significant than that is the fact that when you can't pay your auto loan, what happens is your vehicle's repossessed. And if your vehicle's repossessed, you don't have a way to get to work. Now, I could see this, might be overstating it, but one of the goals of Agenda 21 is to not have people have free travel via automobiles. And this has potential to be a way to reduce the number of vehicles on the street, but it also will prohibit workers from being able to get to work. This is a remarkable form of sabotage, I think. And I kind of just want to make the point here, again, the game is rigged. And I actually want to almost, I would like for us all to have a moment of Goodwill Hunting, it's not your fault. To a certain degree, what's happening is our fault because we have permitted we've permitted the tyranny and the oppression to increase. But at the same time, we have been set up. And I think it's appropriate to acknowledge that and to have a little bit of anger about that. Hey, we've been set up. And, to a certain extent, it's not our fault. Because what did we do that was wrong? We trusted people who presented themselves as trustworthy. Now, we can't do that. We can't, none of us can afford to do that anymore. And I think it's kind of ironic that the Illuminati is choosing to introduce this information through Fritz Springmeier as if they've changed now and they're going to be good and helpful. If there's one lesson that we have learned, it is that when someone presents himself or herself as trustworthy, we can no longer take that presentation at face value. We have to pop the trunk. We have to look underneath. We have to see what's under the hood. We have to examine it thoroughly. Yeah, I got a lot of vehicle metaphors there, talking about subprime auto loans. But it's crucial for us to understand that we have been set up in the degree to which we have been set up, and to really begin to assume responsibility and to take care of each other. One thing I noticed in the movie about Steve Jobs is that as he was trying to grow and become more professional, he left some of his good friends behind. And it's really, I think, only in the context of relationships that we will be able to overcome the evil that is set upon us. For a bit of good news from Natural News, exercise halts dementia gene from being expressed, keeps your brain healthy. It also clears your head. I don't think I could look into some of the windows I look into as far as all this information if I didn't have some exercise now and then to clear my head, and meditation and other helpful means of being grounded. But certainly exercise is crucial for good health. And I remember reading, I think it was Bryce Taylor's book about mind control. She said that Jane Fonda was in a mind control project to see whether they could halt aging. And they determined that they could halt aging through mind control, but only if the people along with mind control had a pretty vigorous exercise routine. And, this is Jane Fonda. Everybody knows her exercise routine from her videos she used to make. So, get out there in the real world if you can. If it's possible, have some good friends that can keep you grounded, and hopefully we all together will be able to resist this tyranny. And one little bit of hope as far as internet freedom, Alex Jones said that they have means to take their operation offshore, so that they will very likely be able to continue to get the message out there, even as it becomes more difficult to do so. Whether 99th Monkey will be able to do that remains to be seen, but we will certainly do our best and hope for the best. And these things are proposed, but if enough people object to the internet being limited, shut down, they won't be able to do it. So there's always a way, right? Truth will out. And Jesus said, whatever is whispered in dark corners will be shouted from housetops. And that's what we're all trying to do. And make hay while the sun shines. So thank you for tuning in for today's 99th Monkey Liberty News. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Hoping that you will love one another, take care, and enforce the Bill of Rights by insisting on liberty where you live.